Recovery is stupendous.
Achievable.
Hope.
Freedom.
Empowering.
It's unique to everyone.
It's a journey, not a destination.
Getting a new lease on life.
It's finding restoration after you fall down.
Recovery is having the freedom to enjoy life.
For me, it was finding a way to really love myself.
My recovery is possible in part because of my own sense of purpose.
Welcome to Montana's Peer Network Recovery Talks podcast. I'm Jim Haney.
And I'm Andy Daniel.
Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode. We are in Recovery Month, September, and so Andy and I thought we would talk about different recovery programs.
Yeah, there's some things that I feel like everybody knows about, like 12-step programs and things like that, but there's a lot of other options out there for people if that's not what works for you.
Absolutely, like RAP, right? 12-step programs, RAP. Like these are kind of the ones that I think people kind of go to. They're pretty well known. We thought we'd hit on some different ones.
Yeah.
Do you want to start off? Do you want to?
Yeah, I think some things. Well, when I was in inpatient treatment, the facility I was at was both chemical dependency and mental health. And I think they did a really great job with chemical dependency, but it was all 12-step, higher power, all of that stuff. And so I felt sort of alienated by that because that doesn't fit my worldview, I guess. I kind of started looking for secular recovery programs. I found a couple. One of them is LifeRing. So they do the same kinds of things as 12-step, right? They have the same kinds of meetings and stuff like that, but there's not a focus on God or a higher power or whatever. So they have their own way of running the meetings and their own, not prayers, right? But their mantras and stuff like that. And
Sure.
while there are no meetings in Montana, which is going to be a theme running through this whole podcast.
Yes, it is.
They do have online meetings so that you can get involved with them without having to find an in-person meeting.
Nice. Very nice. And how did you know about this one?
I searched for recovery alternatives on the web. And when I was doing the search, it seemed a little easier to find substance use stuff than mental health stuff for alternatives.
I would totally agree with that. I think that, if you're out there and you're like, hey, I need some help and I'm not really sure, and right, maybe you're feeling a little embarrassed, or I think when you first put in recovery, it gets, like we said, sort of dominated, and then a lot of things around addiction, substance use, harder to find like broader ones, right?
Yeah, and the other problem when you search something like that is you end up with a lot of these referral agencies, and they're sometimes hard to spot, but their job is to get you to contact them so that they can refer you to a different treatment center or whatever, and then they get paid for that referral. You kind of have to do your research when you're looking for stuff, and I've found a lot of them use the same language or the same, first page of their website or something like that, so that if they're a referral organization or a referral agency, they're probably not providing any kind of services directly.
Right, exactly. It's almost like a pass-through.
Yeah.
You're just contacting them and they're sort of handing you off, yeah. Well, one of them that I wanted to talk about is alternatives to suicide. So this, I got introduced to this through a workshop I attended at the Alternatives Conference a few years ago. I think it was in the one in Memphis, but I can't remember. It could have been Austin. Anyway, they had a workshop, and this is something that, for me, what drew me to it was I'm a 2-time suicide attempt survivor, and I feel like in Montana, we don't do a very good job of addressing suicide. Like the ranking just came out recently. Again, we were ranked number 1, and there's really no change in our approach. We just keep sort of doing the same thing. I went to the workshop and right away, I was like, this is great. This is people like myself supporting other people like me. It's peer support, but it's super specific, and no counselors, no safety plans. It's all run by peers. And so it's run by a company called Western Mass Recovery Learning Community. If you just type in alternatives to suicide, it comes right up. It's like spot on. It's like the things they're saying, it's the same way that I feel like it says this right on the website. Historically, people have believed it was too dangerous to offer peer-to-peer support groups focused on the topic of suicide without a clinician. It's like, it's so true.
Yeah.
Like, right? Like, but we believe in peer support. We have peer support. We pay for peer support. People want to be peer supporters, but oh no, not around the topic of suicide, and so it's super cool. And they have a bunch of different trainings available. I mean, there's the full facilitator training, that's 3 days, but they have all kinds of workshops, conversations on suicide, dialogue on suicide, 1 day, 2 days, half day, alternatives to suicide group overview, half day, 3 to 4 hours. They even have one called Myths of Suicide Workshop. And they have workshops on self-injury. They have pricing right on here. I mean, obviously, the bigger trainings cost a lot more, but it's actually pretty affordable. I think the pricing is right on. And so you have these folks, Western Massachusetts, really putting out something that I think is really pretty incredible. There's a webinar. There's a bunch of resources here that are available right on the site. There's a list of course, if you live in Massachusetts, there's local support groups and there's always local training. So, this would be something where we would find a champion and they would bring it to Montana, alternatives to suicide. I think it's something that we should take a look at, because I don't know, the bumper stickers, the posters, I don't know that that's having as big of an impact as something like this could have if it was actually happening in communities. And maybe when we have these clusters of suicides, maybe we implement some of these groups and we start giving people this place to come and be, safe and where it's non-judgmental, and we're not diagnosing people. It's just for support. So
right. And I've always felt like working with a clinician who doesn't have any personal experience with mental health issues or suicidal thoughts or anything, I've never really felt a good connection with those, professionals. I mean, yes, they can help, but that personal experience means so much to me, to know that somebody has had those same thoughts or those same feelings, and can approach it from that perspective, which I guess is something that sort of got me excited about peer support anyway, is being able to use that experience and not have to be clinical about it.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I think we need to have exposure to as many different alternatives, and that is kind of a good word for it, right? Like, and I mean that from the sense of, as you and I, we're people in recovery, but then also like our communities and our societies and what we're offering people, and having that element of people who've been there, done that. It just brings so much more to the table, but we've got to offer more to people. We're very limited, I think, in Montana as a whole. It's really, again, I think it's a lot of 12-step or it's RAP.
Yeah.
And I think, when I know when you and I were discussing this for Recovery Month, it was like, hey, what if we just talked about a bunch of these different programs? And so I think this is great. You have another one that you want to?
The Hearing Voices Network is, an interesting organization. It's more about embracing those voices as opposed to seeing them as a problem, I guess.
Yeah.
Learning to live with that's the way your mind works. It doesn't look like there's anything active in Montana again right now, but they do have online forums. They're not support groups so much as, I mean, they're not like phone calls or video. There's a discussion forum where you post your question, and so it's not immediate, right? You have to wait for responses and stuff. But it's just a different way of looking at things, I guess. That's pretty interesting.
It's great, and that's what we need. Again, I mean, I just think it's the more choices and the more exposure to different things, because we say many pathways for people in recovery.
Yeah.
But I'm not really sure we offer people many pathways all the time.
Right.
Right.
Or what does many mean?
Yeah. There you go. One of them that I wanted to mention is White Bison. So it's whitebison.org. These guys they have a variety of things. This is Native American based. Again, not a lot of stuff happening in Montana, but they have, if you click on training programs, so they have Mending Broken Hearts, Medicine Wheel in 12 Steps. They have family programs, youth programs. They have a Warrior Down program. They have an implementation guide. And if you click on like the Mending Broken Hearts, I've seen this video many times, and I'm just going to click on the community-based one. This is to train facilitators to implement this curriculum in the community. This develops grief healing coaches in the community to heal from unresolved grief and the loss created by the legacy of historical or intergenerational trauma, especially the effects of the boarding schools. Anybody who's familiar with Native American culture and communities knows this is a really big issue. And then if you click on like where their training is, you can get to the calendar, like it's a training event page, and they have all their programs listed on here and all the locations, and Colorado Springs, which is where they're based, Las Vegas, Costa Mesa, California, Alberta, Canada. I'm not seeing anything in Montana. And it's really unfortunate. It's really unfortunate because we show one of these videos in the Peer Support 101, and it always brings up really rich discussion, not just about Native American recovery, but about trauma. I really like Don Koyas' approach, and then they offer it for women, for men, for youth, for communities. I mean, they're really thinking about the whole, and so I really like it. And again, more choices for people, I think, is what it's all about. And they have this vision of creating these grief healing coaches, and then they start these healing groups, and then the groups create what they call a healing forest. All of the individuals creating, the community are healing together and individually. It's a program I would definitely recommend people take a look at. Also, they talk about the intergenerational trauma, and then it talks about 7 generations. The trauma can be carried as far as 7 generations, which was a big eye-opener to me. Yeah.
Another one that I find really interesting is Recovery International. Their website is amazing. There's so much information on there and real good examples of how to run a group or a meeting. Lots of worksheets and that kind of thing. And like all the other ones, there aren't very many things happening in Montana. The Montana State Hospital runs a couple of groups, and then there's one in Missoula at the library. At least there's something, but
yeah. And one of our members, Monique Casbier, runs that Missoula one. I think she's been running it for years.
The really unique thing about this one is that they have a Facebook meeting group. So they have in-person, telephone, online chat, and then this Facebook group. So you can look up Recovery International meeting page and you can join that group. It's a closed group, so you have to ask to be in it. And it looks like they've got over 1,100 people in that.
Wow.
That group there. So
that's big.
Yeah. That would be a really interesting, it's so easy, I think, to get on Facebook now. People are on it all the time. It'd be nice to have something supportive that way.
Absolutely. I see they also have telephone meetings, they have the online meetings, chat meetings, and the face group meetings. So there's actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different ways that you can interact with recoveryinternational.org.
Yeah, there's lots and such
great.
good information on the website.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it says Recovery International meetings provide a safe space to receive guidance, fellowship, acceptance, support from peers with similar problems. All meetings follow Dr. Lowe's Recovery International method that addresses underlying cause of most symptoms. Yeah, this is another really good one. I know a few years ago we had Recovery International at our conference, and they did a workshop, and I think your other one also, the Hearing Voices Network, I think they were there in 2017, and we did a virtual group, and so they were there too. So, well, one that I wanted to share that I'm familiar with is called SELF. This is from the Sanctuary Model by Dr. Sandra Bloom. SELF being capital SELF. It's an acronym for Safety, Emotion, Loss, and Future. And I got exposed to this 5 or 6 years ago. And as an organization, we purchased this curriculum, and we did it both internally as an organization, and then we offered it as a community support group. And so this one is really, Sandra Bloom did a wonderful job putting this together. Now, it doesn't use the terms peer support and some of the recovery language that we would utilize today, but the group is definitely designed for the lay person to facilitate. And it has educational handouts about trauma, different types of trauma, research on trauma, and then it has a worksheet. So you take these home, you read the educational materials, you complete the worksheet. The worksheet is about your own recovery. And so you're kind of learning in 2 different ways with this group. And then when you come back to the group, you discuss what you read at home, and you get the next set of worksheets. And that's really how it's designed. I learned so much about trauma, and it's where I learned that term White Bison uses, which is the unresolved grief, another word for the trauma that we might be carrying around, that we felt a loss and we sort of are grieving it, but we never process it completely. I learned so much, would highly recommend this one, and it's really good, and it's really, I think any peer supporter could easily implement this and utilize it in a peer support group, working with a group of people.
Yeah, it looks like they really kind of focus on sort of a community approach.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting. And there's a lot here. There's a lot of material that has been put into it. It's really, I think it's a really high quality curriculum that, again, anybody could do. Right on the webpage, it says here, grant applications, federal funding sources insist that programs become, quote, trauma informed. But how can professionals, some with extensive professional training and some with very little formal training, address the issues that arise surrounding past abuse or exposure to violence without opening up a can of worms? And then she kind of goes into explaining the program, and lots of good information. SELF represents the 4 nonlinear key areas of recovery that provide an organizing framework for the complex problems presented by trauma survivors, by families with problems, and by chronically stressed organizations. That's the other thing with this training. Your organization could actually become certified in the Sanctuary Model. So your policies and procedures, and definitely recommend it. If
you're looking for a way to get involved politically, they have some really good information about how to, one of the topics here is nonviolent protest. They've got some really good information about how to talk to your elected officials, that kind of stuff. So, I feel like that's like another step, right? Once you're
for sure
really comfortable in your own recovery, a next step is to try to change the system if something needs to be changed.
Absolutely. And I clicked on the 3rd one in the series, a new operating system for trauma-informed systems of care. I mean, these are terms we use, trauma-informed, systems of care. Like, we use these terms all the time in behavioral health, state level, we use these terms, but really, to truly embrace it, it's more than just going to a presentation or a webinar and learning the statistics or the prevalence of it. You really have to begin to embrace it, and it has to flow through your policies, your procedures, mandatory training for behavioral health staff, and really addressing the issues of, amongst staff and clients, families, the community. It's way bigger than I think some of the other ones that are out there that are just sort of rehashing the statistics sort of over and over again. It's really, this is more about the action that you're going to take and how you can do it. Yeah, I mean, it's really, it's a good one. I really enjoyed it. I did it a couple of times as a group, and then I did it with the organization. So, Dr. Sandra Bloom. So do you have another one that you want to touch on here?
Whole Health Action Management. So,
oh, yes.
WHAM. It's under the National Council for Behavioral Health. It's really peer-led and focused on your own self-management as opposed to a clinical view of things also.
Right. And you can actually download a lot of these materials. Like, I'm looking at the Peer Support Training Participant Guide, and you can see really what it's all about. So, yeah, you have the National Council involved. You have SAMHSA and HRSA, which is the Center for Integrated Health Solutions, and the utilization of the 8 dimensions of wellness. And at one time, this is a 2-day training, and at one time, this was very close to being integrated for certified peer supporters, right? Like, that's where I think this was originally designed. I feel like that's kind of like what they were aiming for. And I think it was picked up in some states. I know, like in Georgia, I think they utilize this. And Optum Health, which is a managed healthcare company, they require this training, I'm pretty sure, for their certified peers. So more of that whole health. And yeah, it's a good program for sure.
And it looks like there's some sort of accountability with it, like weekly worksheets and check-in and stuff, which I'm not sure you always get in traditional support group things. That there's more accountability, I guess, with this one.
Exactly. And this one is looking at, so this is like, so as a peer supporter, I'm working with, my peer, Bob or Sally, the fictitious person, and, you're looking at 10 whole health and resiliency factors. So things like stress management, healthy eating, physical activity, sleep, service to others, having a purpose, having supports, positive expectation, cognitive skills like positive thinking versus negative thinking, spiritual beliefs, and that sense of meaning. What are you doing, each day? What are you working towards? Very person-centered. There's like a personal log. There's one-on-one support. There's a group. There's an action plan. It's pretty comprehensive. I had an opportunity a few years ago to go do this, and I didn't. And I really wish that I had. And this, who knows, might come to Montana at some point. So if you have an opportunity as a peer supporter, you might want to think about this as a continuing education to go get certified in this. Maybe you're the person who brings it to Montana.
Yeah, I think it's important for people to have this wide range of options, and the more things we can get into Montana, the better. They're not going to be throughout the whole state, right? You'd have to have a bunch of people trained in each one of those things. But absolutely.
But again, it's like more tools in the toolbox. And even if you didn't go to the formal training, I mean, right here, I'm looking at the worksheets. I mean, they're right here. Like, there's nothing that stops you from downloading it and, going through page 31 and just sort of flip. Everyone has negative thoughts and engages in negative self-talk. That's not the problem. The problem is when it spirals downward and people end up finding themselves and in absolute and permanent language. 3 steps to help this attitude. Catch it early, check it, and change it. And then there's like questions and there's boxes like you check stuff. List 3 to 4 actions you found helpful in catching, checking, and changing your negative self-talk. It's basic, it's worksheets. And so you could easily download this and you could walk through this yourself, or you could bring it to your peer supporter and say, hey, I want to work on this. Or if you're a peer supporter, there's nothing that stops you from downloading this and reading through it and getting familiar with it and using those that you're working with. So,
and they have a specific training for serving veterans also. So
nice.
That helps you sort of understand that culture, and that it's an online course. So, and you have 12 months from the date that you sign up for it and pay for it to finish it. So that you have this certification in veterans behavioral health.
Nice. Very nice. Yeah. So, I think, in each of these, I feel like we discovered not many of them are in Montana. That's
right.
One of them that, we need a champion to kind of bring those, with the exception of the Recovery International. That one is here. So we need champions to say, oh, that'd be something I'm interested in, and kind of bring that to Montana and be the person that promotes it and maybe starts the first ever group. Like Monique is running the group in Missoula, and Pat, I think, runs the group at the state hospital for Recovery International, right? But, what if you're in Billings?
Yeah.
And, right, okay, there is no group. Or maybe it's one of these other ones, the sanctuary model or something, and you could, maybe apply to your local advisory council, and you get, some funds, and you purchase the sanctuary model, the self group, and you bring it to your community, and you put on this community group, and then you have that. So I think that's one thing that definitely came out of it. And I think the other thing for me was that there are a lot of them out there, but you do have to search, and you have to go through more than just the first sort of page.
Yeah. Yeah, it does take some effort to find things that are uncommon or less common, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So don't give up, I guess, is what I'm thinking. That should be a part of it.
Yeah, if one doesn't work, try something else.
Exactly. Because you never know. You never know what's going to click for you, and you might find a connection or just speaks to you, and you'll know it when it happens, for sure. Yeah. Any other ones that we want to touch on?
I found a lot of things that had just a small bit of information, or, weren't quite as well organized as the ones we talked about.
Yeah. Well, if you're listening and you have other ones that you think we should have covered or you'd like us to cover, send us an email or go on our Facebook page and send us a message, and we're happy to share that with people. If you found something that works for you and we're not talking about it, let us know, and we're happy to put the word out there to the other listeners.
And if you're doing something innovative, we'd like to do a podcast with you.
Absolutely. We totally would love to. Yeah. I think we're wrapping up another good podcast here. I think this was a good conversation, and hopefully you as the listener out there learned some things and learned about some new programs.
Yeah, there's a lot of different options out there if you just look a little bit.
Well, thank you, Andy. This was a good one. This one was different. Just felt different. We were sort of presenting specific programs. So
it's energizing, actually, to see all of the stuff that's out there.
Yeah. Thank you, the listener, for tuning in to Recovery Talks podcast from Montana's Peer Network, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Recovery works, and recovery is possible.
Recovery works, and recovery is possible.
Recovery works. Recovery is possible.
Recovery is possible.
Recovery works, and recovery is possible.
Recovery works, and recovery is possible.
Recovery works, and recovery is possible.
Recovery is possible.